So here at the Katie Phang News Channel, you hear me say all the time how much I am a fan for local journalism. As somebody who grew up in Miami, Florida, since the early age of 8 years old, the Miami Herald has been a go-to for me. I'm also a huge fan of the Texas Tribune. I want to underscore how important our local journalism is and how essential it is to continue to support it, because I have the chance now to speak to one of the best reporters at the Miami Herald. This is Anna Ceballos. Anna is the state government and politics reporter for the Miami Herald. Anna is tip of spear alongside some incredible colleagues at the Miami Herald that have been covering everything that has been going on at what is deemed to be called Alligator Alcatraz. So Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Anna, your latest piece that came out with your byline, it's entitled "A Black Hole. Attorneys Say They Still Can't Reach Clients in Alligator Alcatraz." I read the piece, and I am urging everybody who's tuning in right now to be able to go and read it, because as a lawyer, obviously one of my primary concerns when I heard about Alligator Alcatraz was exactly this: the ability for detainees to be able to have contact with their lawyers, to be able to put up as much of a fight as they possibly can, seeing how the deck has been stacked against them. But share with our viewers right now a little bit about what you found when you were writing this piece.
Sure. So it's July 15th. So we have been talking to about 7 attorneys for this specific piece, and we interviewed each of them. And it's been about close to 2 weeks since the detention facility started taking in detainees, and a lot of them are still having trouble setting up a legal visitation. They say that the phone numbers and the emails that they are being given are either ringing and ringing, no one responds, or there is a response via email, but there's really no follow through with like when they fill out a form as to when exactly they will be able to see their clients. There's also concerns about where the detainees are being set, whose custody they're in. The detainees' names are not showing up in the ICE locator, which is like a database that is meant for the public, like family members and attorneys, to be able to look up their clients and check where they are in whose custody. For example, it will show up if they're at a Chrome detention facility for ICE or at a county jail being held under an ICE detainer. So the names really are not showing up in the federal system at this moment when they go to Alligator Alcatraz. They also have expressed concern about just how to even file a legal brief, because jurisdiction is not very clear. You know, the state facility is state run, but at the end of the day, these are ICE detainees. So attorneys are really trying to navigate a system where they're trying to see if this is for example, if they want to post bond for a detainee, they would have to figure out whether it's something they have to do with the federal government, with the state government. You know, the Trump administration is saying this is not an ICE facility, but it's really unclear as to exactly how to start the process legally for any potential challenges to their detention.
So I want to get to that in a second. But I almost, from what I'm hearing, Anna, but isn't this kind of the point? I kind of feel like the point for them is to make it difficult, because we've heard DeSantis officials, as well as, frankly, federal officials, including the Trump administration, say that this is kind of a one-stop shop, right? It's the bring them there, give them their, quote, due process, even by maybe deputizing Florida National Guardsmen to be able to serve as the immigration judges. And then because there's an airstrip there, you can just put them on a plane and fly them out to, at this point, you could take them to a third country where they're not even citizens. And that's deemed to be legal right now in the United States. The idea that jurisdiction is almost intentionally confusing, it just kind of really sticks in my craw, because the immigration proceedings are federal immigration proceedings. The federal government controls everything. It's federal law that's controlling this. And yet it's a state detention facility that's housing it. And so when you were speaking to these lawyers, did they kind of agree with my assessment, which is the challenges are baked in, but it's kind of a feature, not a bug?
Well, at least the attorneys that we've talked to, they've said that it's abnormal for there to be this kind of delay, but it is a facility that was open within 8 days, right? So the operation rollout has been quick. And so we did talk actually to a Department of Homeland Security official who could not speak freely because they're not really, or publicly, I'm sorry, because they are not allowed to speak with their names and the newspaper. But they were saying that this has been part of a feature of a rollout that has been very quick, right? It's the systems are not married to each other. So, but that there's other concerns that some attorneys I talked to said that they're, the clients that they have at the detention facility are being given, for example, booking and inmate numbers, not necessarily alien numbers, which are like numbers that are more compatible with the federal immigration system. So I'm not really sure exactly what the intent is, but what the result that we have seen, at least so far, 2 weeks into the operation, is that there has been, I guess, a struggle to figure out how to be able to reach detainees inside of the facility.
So one of the men that was highlighted, who's a client of one of these immigration attorneys with whom you spoke, the immigration attorney, her name is Magdalena, is it Kuprice? I can't pronounce her last name, but she mentioned that she has 3 clients at Alligator Alcatraz, one of which is a Honduran man with a pending asylum application as a victim of human trafficking. And she was remarkably able to obtain a bond hearing date despite trying to, having some problems to do so. But what was wild about this for me, Anna, was the Honduran man called his lawyer, this woman Magdalena, when he was stopped by FHP, and he has a valid DL, valid driver's license. The FHP officer took the phone, and according to Magdalena, the immigration attorney, this FHP officer told her that anyone who, quote, appears Hispanic needs to be sent to CBP, which is Customs and Border Protection, to have their license verified. But we're also hearing, judges that are saying you can't do this. You cannot racially profile. When you're hearing stories like this as a reporter, I mean, it just strikes me as just being and I've said this, it's like working while brown or driving while brown. I mean, it just seems pretty apparent that this is part of the kind of parameters that they're doing on these immigration raids or these immigration roundups.
So this is like an account from one attorney, right? And this is a first person account. That's what she told us that she was told over the phone when she was trying to help her client after he was being detained. The Florida Highway Patrol notably did respond in response to that. And we did ask them for comment, right? And then they said that it was false and that they're not really giving any instruction to the I guess the anecdote that was relayed to us. So it's really unclear exactly as to how FHP officers are individually operating as they are having these newly found powers under a 287G program, which is like a federal immigration program that allows them to be trained and certified to have certain duties as federal immigration agents while they're out and doing their routine jobs on the street. So there is like this moment in time where, like, for example, like officers for the Florida Highway Patrol are being empowered to kind of do more immigration enforcement while they're doing their jobs. So it's unclear really exactly. There hasn't really been a very wide analysis as to how each of these officers are operating. But what the state is telling us is that that they're absolutely not being given any instruction to profile based on, someone's ethnicity, but this is what one attorney did experience. And that's what she told us she was told.
So you guys at the Herald have been doing an amazing job kind of doggedly running down the details and the background of this. We know that this land is owned by Miami-Dade County. The mayor of Miami-Dade County, Daniela Levin-Cava, has recently been speaking out about kind of the terms by which this whole deal has come around. Do you have any kind of updated information as to any of the background on these deals at all?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, don't worry. Seriously, I can start barking. It's fine, don't worry.
So I do not have an update other than like the land deal is still kind of being negotiated. This was a property. It was an airport that was, being used by some pilots for training purposes. It was functional. It was like mostly idle, but at the same time, it was owned by the county, right? And DeSantis took this land over with using emergency powers. And that's where I today we have like pretty much a fully operational city in the middle of the Everglades. But there is no update on whether or not where the land negotiations are going. I know that there were like some numbers being thrown around. The state wanted to pay less than what the county wanted. But till this day, there seems to be some wrangling still going on between local and state officials over not just the property, but even like the oversight of this property. And, so far it doesn't seem like the mayor is getting a lot of access to the site. And she has written to the state and to the federal officials to get more reports on the monitoring of the site, to get more access to what is going on. And so far, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of wiggle room on those requests.
Doesn't it strike you, though, as being kind of outrageous that the land deal is still pending, and yet it sounds like, there's now asphalt, like they've actually put asphalt and concrete down in the middle of Big Cypress National Preserve. They've actually constructed this kind of tent city, for lack of a better phrase, in the middle of the Everglades, and yet deal terms are still kind of being negotiated from what we know.
It's certainly, because this is an extraordinary use of power through an emergency order, it is like an unusual event. This is, something that I personally do not know. I know that the state has used emergency powers to commandeer private land in the past. I think that there was an event in the Tampa area where, there was I think it was like an environmental issue where they had to kind of like break in to kind of like handle the situation. But like, other than that, this is like not necessarily just like a one-time entry into county-owned land, but it's really just the use of it is going to be indeterminate. Like, we don't really know how long this operation is going to be in this location. And so far, we've been told that it could be up like maybe a year, maybe longer. So it is really an unusual use of these powers, but it's up to we will see it play out in the weeks to come, I'm sure, as to exactly how it's being challenged.
Have you been, in your attempts to be able to obtain information from the DeSantis administration, specifically here in Florida, have you been getting the transparency that you all have been seeking at the Herald when you've gone to them to ask them questions about oversight, management, operations, even jurisdictional stuff when it comes to Alligator Alcatraz?
We are getting some information, but not all our questions are not necessarily being answered. For example, when we asked about visitations, for legal visitations for the story we just did for attorneys, they sent us a response, right? They said, that visitations can happen for family members and for attorneys upon request, and they gave us an email. But like, when we asked, okay, well, how many visitations has the state approved as of Monday? There's no response. So there is some information coming out, but it's all of the questions that we're asking are not being responsive. There's been certainly a lot of anecdotes that we've been trying to get confirmation on that, like, the state is not really acknowledging, but they seem to acknowledge them to some lawmakers who toured the site on Saturday. So, for example, I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz had asked about, or she didn't ask, but she said that she was told by state officials that they were not allowed to see the restrooms because they were concerned that detainees might throw feces at them. That is something that we had heard in the week prior, and we asked the state, but we never really even heard a response. So it's just like a lot of, I would say, cherry picking sometimes of what questions are being answered and which ones are not. We have also, for example, requested a list of detainees to who is in the state facility, and we have been put through the formal public records request. It's not something that is very even when they are responsive, they're not quick to respond in certain cases.
Well, you guys did manage to get your hands on a list of the names, though, of the people that are at Alligator Alcatraz, correct?
Right, but it was not through the state.
No, I understand, but the Miami Herald, through your reporting, though, through your investigative journalism, the Herald was able to determine the names of the detainees that are currently at Alligator Alcatraz, right?
Right. We were able to obtain a list of about 750 detainees who are at the facility or scheduled to be at the facility. And this is, again, the number is really just a snapshot in time from the moment that we publish the story. So those numbers are always fluctuating. The populations are changing, increasing, decreasing. We don't really know. The state did tell us that deportations are already ongoing, but like we really don't
from that facility. From deportations off U.S. soil are happening from Alligator Alcatraz already?
Well, they were not very clear. They just said deportations are happening, right? So we don't really know exactly where this happened. We just know that maybe some individuals have been deported, but we don't know from where. We don't know by whom. We don't know who these individuals were, if it's individuals or an individual. So again, there is kind of information coming from the state, but not like a lot of detailed information to be able to be nuanced, and me being here and being able to tell you exactly what is going on in terms of deportations, for example.
What about the reporting that we've heard from the Herald and other media outlets about the conditions at Alligator Alcatraz? We know that state and frankly, congressional officials did a visit to the facility over the weekend, but we had also known part of that was triggered by calls that are being received by some family members and maybe even lawyers of detainees that are there, saying that the conditions are, in some respects, subhuman, that they are shoved. There's 34 people shoved in a cage, basically. And like you just said, this suggestion by somebody that, feces is so readily accessible, it could be thrown at people that are going to this facility.
Right. So we've been getting a lot of anecdotes coming in from the facility, but this is, information that detainees are relaying to their wives, and then their wives are relaying to us. And we were able to interview quite a few of them, and we were just pretty much basing it off of their personal experiences. And then we were able to match their experiences to other individual experiences. And we were able to put together a picture of what was going on and what were the main complaints going on. And what we found was that a lot of detainees were complaining that they had very little or no access to showers. That at some point last week, there were like toilets that were either overflowing or not working. That there was also concerns that like the air conditioning that is powering the tents was kind of fluctuating with the temperatures. Like one detainee said, for example, that it was so cold one night that he couldn't really sleep, but then the next day by like midday, it was just really hot inside and he just sounded a little bit out of breath. So there's just like a lot of different anecdotes that are kind of matching to different experiences. And so we, based on the access, we haven't really been given access to the site since detainees started coming in. So this is what we're being able to piece together and confirm. They, for example, also confirmed that there was a lot of mosquitoes. That seemed to be something that resonated a lot with detainees. And I know, the Everglades does have pretty large mosquitoes, and some were commenting on how these were the largest they've ever seen. Or, for example, one detainee described grasshoppers the size of his hand coming into the tent. And so these are just experiences that are kind of, not necessarily predictable with like a facility that holds migrants, but it is kind of predictable for a facility in the Everglades. It is a tent facility. We saw the first day of the opening how water kind of came through from underneath a tent after a storm. And so bugs could probably, have access as well underneath a tent. And that's what they were telling us, that there seemed to be some openings within the tent, and that's how the bugs were getting in.
Have you guys been able to have, there was like a press conference a few weeks ago where members of the media were there, and there was a normal, by the way, South Florida storm, and there was the water and the flooding and everything that was going on. Have members of the media been invited to go back to the facility to be able to see for themselves what is happening inside?
Not to my knowledge. I think that just a group of reporters was invited July 1st, which was when President Donald Trump came into the site, and then detainees came in the next night. So since detainees have been coming into the facility, to my knowledge, I don't think that any press has been allowed in, but there was a large group of lawmakers, both from the state level and the federal level, who were given a tour by state officials.
What, this is state politics and government, that is your beat. And I mean, I'm no fan of this current administration for DeSantis, and that's not a secret. It's mine. It's my opinion, not yours. But I mean, it is worth asking you, this is an unprecedented moment to have something like this. I mean, some people have equated it, including me, to meeting the definitions of a concentration camp. Some people have also dubbed it as Alligator Auschwitz. I mean, and they're not saying it to be light about it. There is very real human rights and civil rights concerns about what is happening there. But for me, it seems to be part and parcel with kind of the bigger picture mission of this DeSantis administration. You covered this administration. There was a declaration by DeSantis in 2023, I want to say, if not earlier, that there was a state of emergency in Florida. And that's where he's invoked the emergency powers to be able to seize this land, to put this facility there. Your thoughts, just kind of imparting with us about kind of how this immigration boogeyman has been used by DeSantis and a lot of the stuff that you've covered as a reporter in terms of policies and in terms of actions that he's taken officially as the governor of the state of Florida.
Governor Ron DeSantis, from the moment he came into office, made clear that immigration would be one of his priorities. I mean, he's been very clear about that, and I don't think he shies away from it. From the moment that he announced he was running for governor back in, what was it, 2016, 2017? I think it's probably 2017. He made mandatory E-Verify, which is like the system that checks the the immigration status for new employees. He wanted to implement it statewide across the state. So this is a man who's been very clear about his priorities. And every single year since he's been in office, he has continued with that priority. And now we are at a point where he's been in office this is his second term. He's set to leave office January 2027. So he's just almost to the end of his 2 terms. And we are seeing what his policies have been able to accomplish, right? And he has made it a point that he wants Florida to be positioned at the forefront of President Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign. And he's been able to really act really quickly by using emergency powers, by, trying to pressure state lawmakers to implement his agenda. We've seen, this emergency declaration from 2023. He sent state law enforcement officers from the Florida National Guard to the Texas border. He has been trying to, really anything you can think of that he could have done at the state level to crack down on illegal immigration, he's been trying to do it. And now this facility is kind of the answer to something that President Donald Trump has said is very much needed, which is detention space. And he has been he even has like a Florida blueprint of sorts. He has like this plan where he wanted to, with all the wish list items that he wanted to do with, to crack down on illegal immigration. And most of those issues have come to fruition with this facility. And so I think what we're seeing is like a Republican governor who has national ambitions, but also is very adamant to maintain his priorities when it comes to immigration. And he has been able to use the levers of his office and be able to execute it. A lot of the policies have created a lot of division. There's a lot of Democrats, Republicans have very different opinions about what is going on, how it's being handled. But at the end of the day, it is something that this governor and his administration has prioritized for the last 7 years. So I think
you're right. He's a Republican governor with a Republican cabinet and a Republican majority legislature. So he's kind of been given like a blank check to be able to do this stuff. And he's done it disturbingly well. I'll use that adverb. You don't have to use that adverb. I'll use that adverb. Ceballos, thank you so much. You are an intrepid reporter. You and your colleagues at the Miami Herald. I want to thank you again for, being a local journalist. I truly believe that local journalism deserves to not only survive this crazy kind of media ecosystem, but is doing the work as the boots on the ground that we need so that people that are not in Florida, maybe are in, somewhere in the United States can have a firsthand view into something like this atrocity that's going on in our state and in our backyard. So Anna Ceballos, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.